Hello and welcome to this very special episode of Rising India Empowered Planet. Now, we all know that India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And it's obvious that any growing economy needs power. But there's so much concern around climate change and the greenhouse gas emissions that are happening. But the interesting part and the heartwarming and the important part is the efforts that the government of India is taking. In fact, in November 2021 at COP26, the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi announced that India would be net zero emissions by 2070. Now, in this scope, one very important, a key part of this whole plan is green hydrogen. What is green hydrogen? Why is it important? And what is the way ahead for India in the green hydrogen sector? That's what we're going to be discussing on this very special episode. I have a panel of experts here with me. Allow me to introduce them. First up, we have Mr. Arun Sharma. He's the head of sustainability and climate change at Adani Group, and he's also distinguished professor emeritus at Queensland University of Technology. We have Mr. Ajay Mishra, Director General, Renewable Energy Society of India. And we have Mr. Shivanand Nimbargi, the MD and CEO of Ayana Renewable Power. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me here today. To kickstart the discussion, Mr. Arun Sharma, sir, I'll come to you. You know, like I mentioned, the Prime Minister announced at COP26 the goal of India to be net zero by 2070. How do you see this progressing further? What are some of the changes that you're seeing for India to achieve this important goal?
Well, thank you, and it's an honor to be part of this panel. I think India is in a fairly strong journey. Decarbonization and net zero will require that the country electrifies as much of its operation as possible, and the electricity has to be green. And India's push and Honorable Prime Minister's target is a step in the right direction. But we also know renewable energy is intermittent, and hence we have to look at storage technologies for baseload power. We are investing in batteries, and green hydrogen does provide another great option for decarbonizing the economy. Now, one thing is fairly straightforward and clear. I think India has chosen a very responsible path about the 2070 as a net zero target date, because India has to grow. India's energy consumption is 40% of the world's average and 1/10 to 1/5 of most developed economies. So India's energy production has to multiply several fold if the people of India have to have a quality of life they deserve. But it has to be done in a responsible way. Now, net zero path is actually quite interesting. There is no net zero without green hydrogen. The last mile of every sector requires green hydrogen to come down in price. And if you look at electricity generation, if the price of green hydrogen came down under $1 a kilogram from today's price of anywhere between $3 to $4 a kilogram, then we have a way to produce renewable power and baseload power in a very clean way. Similarly, if we look at some of the sectors like steel production, there is no way to decarbonize steel production unless the price of green hydrogen comes down. If we look at the aviation sector, the production of sustainable aviation fuels or green kerosene, again, is dependent on the green hydrogen pathway. If we look at shipping, again, green ammonia is touted as one of the possibilities to decarbonize the shipping sector, and that also comes from green hydrogen. So India has to be at the forefront of green hydrogen revolution because we have no choice. We are a net importer of energy. We spend $160 billion a year. Hence, the role of green hydrogen becomes very important.
Thank you for that opening comment, Mr. Sharma. I will be discussing a lot more with you later on in the panel. Mr. Mishra, coming to you, sir, it's important for India to grow in this space, for the green hydrogen sector to grow in India. But what other policy changes that you think should be put in place? This question for you, Mr. Ajay Mishra, sir.
I'll start with, 1 year back, our focus of government started with the speech and commitment of our Honorable Prime Minister on 15th August last year. 2070 is the ultimate target which has been set. But we would like, or we should focus on the targets which the Indian government is announcing, and the public and the private sector both are moving in tandem, I'll say, to a large extent, for 2030 targets.
Right.
2030 targets, all of us know, are for approximately 5 MTs of green hydrogen by that time. Also, last week, if I remember correctly, the cabinet took a decision that approximately 50% of our renewable energy to be green hydrogen in the next 10 years or 8 years. The green hydrogen policy basic framework was announced a few months back. The IH2A Alliance, Indian Hydrogen Alliance, has put up, if I can say, benchmarks or the short-term targets which we should be having to achieve this. And we are overall on a good beginning, I'll say.
Right.
Right. I will repeat, we have no choice, as Sri Arun Sharma ji has said. And green hydrogen, in the wordings of one Professor Sun from Australia, it is the holy grail of future energy sustainability. And for an importing country like India, energy importing, that is the only solution for us to be a global production hub, as well as for export of energy in future.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra, for that. Moving now to Mr. Shivanand. Sir, same question to you, sir. Your thoughts on, because so your field of experience is also in renewable energy. So what are you seeing, sir? What more could the government do to help India become this green hydrogen superpower, so to say?
If we actually look at the way the country started the renewable energy journey, it also started when the initial tariff of solar was somewhere around rupees 17, and then the government, brought in the VGF schemes, the viability gap funding, and increased the demand and attracted investment from various sources. Coupled with that was the technology side on the solar PV, where the cost went down gradually, and today, we have tariffs below 3 rupees. So something similar has got to happen around the green hydrogen. Country under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister, has taken the initiative to get the policy framework started. Now, in order to kickstart the demand side and in order to address the gap, as rightly mentioned by earlier panelists, about the cost currently being high at about $4 compared to the viability of $1. So initial few tenders will have to come out whereby some support is given in terms of getting the viability gap funding, so that we can start generating the demand for production of green hydrogen. That's number one. Number two, as rightly said, the difference from producing green hydrogen today, which is from gray or blue, whatever we call it, is from different sources of energy. The source of energy that is going to make it green. In terms of production of renewable energy today, I think the country is quite well placed in terms of exploiting wind and solar. The tariffs have come to a reasonably competitive level. The other thing which has to actually happen, in addition to getting the viability gap and the demand picked up for green hydrogen, is to promote the storage technologies, so that the intermittency of the renewable of solar and wind is taken away, and we are able to provide 24/7 clean energy to be able to produce the green hydrogen. Apart from this aspect, the other aspect is also there are different technologies which are there, and in terms of the electrolyzers and other things. So I think probably government could look at some kind of a PLI scheme in terms of getting more and more technology into the country on producing the electrolyzers or other technologies that might be there, in terms of bringing the cost down of actually producing the hydrogen itself. The last aspect which is there is in terms of the technology as well as transportation of hydrogen. So it today costs quite a bit to transport. So I think we need to also focus on getting the technology developed to be able to compress to higher pressures so that we can transport the green hydrogen cost effectively. So those are some of the initial things that I have to mention in terms of moving towards making green hydrogen competitive.
India has a lot of scope in the hydrogen space. We all know that, and the panel has spoken on that. But blue hydrogen, green hydrogen, what is it? I mean, is it like blue would be the first step, then green, or do you feel that we can straight away go to green and a larger portion will directly go to green hydrogen?
So we have to understand what this actually means. Green hydrogen, of course, is using renewable energy, using electrolyzers to produce hydrogen. Whereas gray hydrogen is producing hydrogen from natural gas, which obviously is highly emission intensive. What blue hydrogen means is producing gray hydrogen, capturing the carbon dioxide, and then sequestering it in deep storage sequestration reserves, for which we need geological reserves. Now, blue hydrogen may be a way to start in countries that have serious levels of sequestration reserves, like the Middle East, like United States, or like Australia. India does not seem to have, or that we know of serious sequestration reserves. So blue hydrogen, to my mind, is a non-starter for India for many reasons. One is the cost. If you look at the cost of green hydrogen, it's around $3 to $4. And 70% of the cost of green hydrogen is renewable energy. And we are going to decrease that cost further. And also, so many companies in India, which should be a proud moment for India, are planning on building electrolyzers on Indian cost conditions. So the price of green hydrogen is going to come down precipitously. Whereas the price of blue hydrogen depends on the price of natural gas. So even in the most effective countries where the price of natural gas is between $3 to $4 an MMBTU, the cost of blue hydrogen is $2, provided you have sequestration reserves. So Indian costs are not going to be so low simply because we are dependent on getting LNG from overseas. So at $7 to $10, blue hydrogen doesn't make sense for India even at this time. The other thing is that when you are producing blue hydrogen, you are dependent on the fluctuating price of natural gas. Whereas once you are producing green hydrogen, once you have built a solar plant or a wind farm, the price will keep going down as the price of electrolyzer comes down. So for India, it is green hydrogen. That's what makes sense.
So it is green hydrogen all the way for India. That's where our focus is, and that's where we will be seeing the best results. Yeah. Mr. Mishra, taking this a step ahead, now the government has also initiated the National Hydrogen Mission. Could you tell us your thoughts on how this is going to be beneficial for the country to move towards, to move ahead in this space and to achieve its targets?
The purpose of any mission or any task force or any effort is to provide the impetus, to provide incentives which are required, at least in the initial stages, for green hydrogen. And it's a welcome step. Government of India has earmarked some funds also to start with. They are not much in the budget. It's only approximately, if I remember correctly, about 800 crores in the last budget. But more than that, the proposals which are coming through Indian Hydrogen Alliance, or for example, having 25 national green hydrogen projects, having approximately 5 national hydrogen hubs in the next 3 to 4 years. The financial support will be substantial for this. that along with the private sector. See, this is the first time or one of the very few times when we are seeing the private sector, if I can say, taking the right steps at the right time, including financial commitments, which will see the green hydrogen steamrolling, if I can say, in the next few years. Arun Sharma ji is there, so but then if we see the big industrialists, the Adanis, the Ambanis, even Acme, the kind of funds which they are earmarking for the next few years by way of MOUs, and the kind of alliances or the MOUs which they are having with the leaders of technology in few cases in Europe or in USA, that will set the ball rolling in a much faster way in the days to come for green hydrogen. India, fortunately, is well endowed with solar and in some parts with wind. We have not been able to achieve the 175 GW target, which was set for us few years back. But then even achieving about 100 GW in the last few years is a big achievement. And that is only going to grow more because of the potential which we have. That combined with hydrogen, that will be the ultimate this thing in the days to come. And government is committed to this. And whatever steps are required, as per my information through the people working there, they will be for it in the days to come, along with private sector.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mishra. Coming to you now, Mr. Shivanand. So Mr. Mishra was talking about, the role of private players, the private sector in this. I want to come to you with a similar question. So the role of maybe the synergy between the public sector and the private sector, and the government and the private sector. What is the scope that you see in the future for private players in India under this in this hydrogen space under the government's Indian hydrogen mission?
Essentially, a lot depends on how the policy regulatory environment is framed and how the demand is actually created. So one of the ways the RE sector demand got created was the support of the government and also bringing in the obligations like solar power obligation and wind power obligation under the renewable power obligation. So similarly, I think the country is planning to bring in green hydrogen power obligation. So it mandates and creates actually a demand. So in terms of attracting the investments, once there is a robust policy and regulatory framework available and there is a demand available, I don't think there is an issue in terms of attracting investments. So today on the RE sector, I think India is one of the preferred destinations for most of the investors around the world. That can be easily seen with the amount of participation that we've been seeing in various bids. So it is that initial kickstart that is necessary in terms of getting the demand creation with the right policy and regulatory framework getting established. Also because there is a cost difference in what is there and what could be a commercially viable one. So till the time the technologies evolve and the supply chains evolve to the right cost levels, a certain amount of viability gap funding from the government will help this get kick-started.
Great. Thank you for that, Mr. Shivanand. Coming now to Mr. Sharma. So one question that I do have for you is, with the Adani Group, it has interest in a number of industries, number of verticals. So why the entrance into the green hydrogen space? What's the thought process behind that?
I think I agree with the previous speakers that India is going to leap ahead in green hydrogen because, like everyone, India is providing supply side incentives for production of green hydrogen, but it is probably the only country in the world that is also looking at creating demand side incentive in terms of green hydrogen being used in ammonia production or fertilizers or in refineries or eventually in city gas distribution. And demand is what the business wants. Now, coming back to our chairman's vision, he has spoken on a number of occasions that the Adani Group moves to sectors that are adjacent to where it has already built core competence. We are significant players globally in renewable energy. We are one of the largest renewable energy companies in the world at the lowest possible cost. Now, 70 to 75% of the cost of green hydrogen is renewable energy. And hence, it makes perfect sense for the Adani Group to move into green hydrogen and the entire value chain of green ammonia, green methanol, and other diverse uses of green hydrogen. The other thing that the group has been able to demonstrate is that we can build solar panel at scale and indigenize the entire value chain that is required. Similarly, we are moving into wind turbine manufacturing, and we will manufacture electrolyzers like many other groups in India are doing. So if we are able to do that at Indian cost structures, then we further are able to reduce the cost of green hydrogen. And the other thing that we are doing, and Mr. Sivanand noted it very correctly, that storage of green hydrogen or transport of green hydrogen over long distances is still a challenge. So many projects around the world are looking at ports like the port of Rotterdam to produce hubs where there are green hydrogen producers, there are users of green hydrogen in different industrial sectors, and also export possibilities, and they are trying to do that. What the group has the advantage is that it is not only a renewable energy player, but an equipment manufacturer, and hence a green hydrogen producer, but it can also use ports like Mundra to offtake the green hydrogen. And each of these elements being in the same group, we can be more agile and faster and help India transform its economy. And I'm happy to take some more questions on what are some of the specifics, but that's the reason why the chairman's vision is that green hydrogen is not only good for Adani Group, but ultimately the best thing for India that will position the India as not only an import from a transition India from an importer of energy, fossil fuels, to a clean energy exporter.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Sharma, for that. Clear to see that this is a very pivotal moment for India in the renewable energy, in the new energy space. It's great that that the government and private players and large conglomerates are coming together to make this move to ensure that India has energy security for the future. India is not a net importer, but eventually, hopefully, becomes a net exporter of energy sources. Thank you so much, Mr. Sharma. Thank you, Mr. Mishra. And thank you, Mr. Shivanand, for your time to join me on this special episode of Rising India, Empowered Planet. We've had a great discussion on the green hydrogen space, and the way ahead is very exciting and promising for India. Thank you so much for watching.